Once upon a time, in the quiet of a lawyer's office, the air was thick with grief. Quiet sobbing and whispers filled the office as everyone waited for lawyer Agambila to read Moses's will. Ophabia, Moses's wife, sat stiffly, holding her son Asante's hand, her mind clouded with pain and bitterness. Then, out of nowhere, the sharp sound of stilettos echoed through the hallway. Everyone turned to see who had arrived, and there she was, Beverly. Ophabia's heart stopped. The same Beverly who had ruined her marriage, the side chick Moses had once brought into their home, driving a wedge of hatred and chaos. Beverly had tormented Ophabia daily, and her husband Moses had chosen to side with Beverly, throwing Ophabia and their son to the boys' quarters like outcasts. He even stopped paying Asante's school fees, calling him a good-for-nothing stigma. But when prostate cancer came for Moses, Beverly disappeared, along with her so-called pregnancy. Ophabia had cared for her dying husband, hearing his tearful apologies as he begged for forgiveness. And now, Beverly was here, bold as ever. "What is she doing here?" Ophabia's voice cracked with rage. "She has every right to be here," Lawyer Agambila said coldly. 15 years. That's how long it took for Ophabia and Moses to have their son. During that time, Mama Moses's mother, made Ophabia's life a living hell. "This barren woman will destroy your family line," she hissed. "Leave her or marry another. You're a royal. You can marry as many wives as you want." But Moses had stayed loyal, shielding Ophabia from the storm. Finally, Asante was born. Yet Mama Moses's reaction was a dagger to the heart. "That thing can never be my grandson. Why should we triple say Mephi? God gave you black hair, but you chose to dye that color. And now look at the abomination you've brought into this world. Listen, let me tell you, we are royals, and if you think you are going to turn our family into a laughing stock, think again," she spat while she saw him. Asante was an albino, and no matter how much education Mama Moses received, she refused to believe Asante was her blood. "Hey Moses, come here, come and listen to me. What will people say if you show up with that thing?" Mama hissed. "Get a second wife, a younger one, who won't give you defective children." The poison began to work. Slowly, Moses began to change. He grew distant, ashamed of his own son. Ophabia was in the kitchen one day when she heard the front door creak open. Voices, her mother-in-law's sweet deceptive tone, another voice, softer but carrying an edge of confidence. She wiped her hands on a napkin and peeked through the doorway. Mama Moses stood in the middle of the living room, her arm around a young woman with skin smooth as fresh palm oil. "This is Beverly," Mama Moses announced, "daughter of Mama Atimu, the one who had 5 sets of twins. Their family is very fertile." Ophabia's stomach twisted. Fertile? What kind of introduction was that? Moses barely looked up from his phone. "Uh-huh." Beverly smiled and dipped her head slightly. "It's nice to meet you, Brother Moses." Brother Moses. Ophabia knew that trick. She stepped forward, arms folded. Mama Moses chuckled, patting Beverly's back like a proud mother. "Oh, she'll be staying with us. I get lonely in my son's big house anytime I visit, so I brought her to keep me company, but she's like a daughter to me." Ophabia's jaw tightened. Like a daughter? Since when? Moses finally looked up, eyes shifting between his mother and Beverly. "Where's she staying?" Mama Moses waved a dismissive hand. "There's plenty of space. She'll be fine." And just like that, Beverly was planted like a weed in their lives. At first, Moses resisted. Ophabia saw it, how he kept his distance, how he barely acknowledged Beverly's presence. But pressure is a dangerous thing, especially when it comes from a mother who knows her son's weak spots. "Moses, my son," Mama Moses would whisper when Ophabia wasn't around. "A man needs a strong home, a woman who can give him more children. You work so hard. Don't you deserve a full house like your father had? Remember, that thing Ophabia gave birth to can't carry your legacy. After all these years of childlessness, look at what she brought to this house. The next time she gives birth, She'll bring a one-legged baby to this house, oh. Mama Moses said, chuckling to herself. Then there was Beverly, always present but never overstepping. A small laugh here, a gentle touch on the arm there. Always helpful, always respectful, never confrontational. Ophelia saw the shift happen in real time. Moses stopped resisting. It started small, but one night, Ophelia stood watching as Beverly laughed at something Moses said, a hand grazing hers. That was the moment Ophelia knew she was being replaced. Ophelia cried silently at night. She prayed Moses would come back to her senses, but things only got worse. One day, as Ophelia was clearing the dinner table, Beverly stormed in, clutching her stomach. Her voice was sharp and hysterical. "She poisoned my food!" The room went silent. Moses bolted to his feet. "What?" Beverly pointed a shaking hand. "Ophelia, she tried to kill me and the baby." Ophelia laughed, a short, bitter, disbelieving laugh. "Are you serious?" Mama Moses gasped dramatically, clutching her chest. "I knew it. I knew you had a wicked heart." Ophelia's pulse pounded. "Moses, you know I would never." "She's carrying my child," Moses roared, slamming his fist on the table. "Do you want to kill my family line?" Ophelia inhaled sharply, her stomach twisting in knots. How could he believe she was capable of such a despicable act? Asante clung to her dress, his small fingers digging into the fabric in fright. Ophelia swallowed the lump in her throat, looked at Moses, hoping he would see the truth. But from that day, she and Asante ceased to exist for him. The final blow came one rainy evening. Moses walked into their bedroom, avoiding her eyes. "We need to talk." Ophelia's heart pounded. "You and your son have to move to the boys' quarters. Your presence has been affecting the mental health of Beverly." Her breath caught. "My son?" She laughed a hollow, bitter laugh. "You are throwing us out of our own house?" Mama Moses appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "You still have a roof over your head. Be grateful." Ophelia turned to Moses, her voice trembling. "Moses, look at me. This is your son. This is his home. How can you treat him like this?" "Moses, I can't believe you right now. Our son merely suffers from albinism. Stop treating him like he's a disease." Moses exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple like she was just another problem to solve. "I don't want stress. I can't trust you. I have to protect my unborn child. Ophe, just do as I say." Asante toddled into the room, clutching his mother's dress. "Mama." Ophelia blinked back tears and scooped him up. "It's okay, baby." But it wasn't. The day Moses moved them to the boys' quarters was the day Ophelia's heart truly shattered. But karma is patient. When Moses was diagnosed of cancer, Beverly and her so-called pregnancy vanished. No calls, no visits, nothing. At first, Mama Moses defended her. "Beverly is just scared, my son. She'll come." But she never did. It was Ophelia who sat by his bed, cared for him. "I'm sorry," he whispered one night. His once proud voice now weak and broken. "I was a fool." Ophelia said nothing. What was there to say? When he finally took his last breath, she thought the nightmare was over. She was wrong. The air in the lawyer's office was thick with tension. Mama Moses sat stiffly beside Ophelia, gripping the edge of her chair. Across from them, Beverly lounged like she was at a spa, nails freshly painted, a knowing smirk playing on her lips, and no pregnancy in sight. Lawyer Gambila adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "I, Moses Owusu, leave all my properties, including the house in the village, to Beverly Abuaji." Gasps filled the room. Ophelia felt the air leave her lungs. Moses had outdone himself this time. Mama Moses went pale, her hands shaking as they clutched her wrapper. "No." Ophelia's voice was barely a whisper. Lawyer Gambila continued, unbothered by the chaos he had just unleashed. Beverly, however, was enjoying every second of it. "We heard the lawyer," she said, voice dripping with satisfaction. "I want you all out of my properties by daybreak, and I suggest you leave peacefully, or..." She tilted her head, eyes glinting. I won't hesitate to use force. Mama Moses pushed forward, eyes wide with disbelief. You drive me out of the house my son built for me? Beverly let out a short, amused laugh. Yes, Mama, I will. You ungrateful child, I brought you to this house. Beverly shrugged. And that was your mistake. She leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to make sure the words cut deep. I, Beverly, can't have wicked women like you around my properties. And as for me, she smirked, I'm not a fool like Ophebia. Don't try me. I'll show you shaggy. Ophebia closed her eyes, breathing through the storm inside her. Mama Moses trembled, her face a mix of shock and helplessness. Beverly rose gracefully, straightened her dress, and snapped her fingers at the lawyer. Is there anything else? The lawyer looked at Ophebia, then at Mama Moses. His face held no sympathy. That concludes the reading of the will. Silence. Then the weight of reality crashed down. They had nothing, and Beverly had won. Thrown out of the house they once called home, Ophebia gathered the little she had and rented a single room for herself and her son. It wasn't much, but at least they had a roof over their heads. With her last savings, she set up a tabletop business at the market, selling whatever she could: vegetables, second-hand clothes, homemade soup. Then, one afternoon she saw her, Mama Moses, sitting by the roadside, a shaky hand stretched out for coins. Ophebia's heart twisted. This was the same woman who had called her own grandson names, broken her home, and thrown them into the boys' quarters. And yet, Ophebia walked up to her, knelt down and touched her shoulders. Let's go, Mama. Mama Moses didn't lift her head. Her voice was barely a whisper. I deserve this. Ophebia sighed, gripping her hand. No one deserves this. Mama Moses finally looked up, eyes glistening with tears. And so Mama Moses went to live with them in their tiny but loving room. One day, as Mama Moses sat by the window watching Asante play, she took Ophebia's hand gently. I was blinded by pride and ignorance, but you loved when you had every reason to hate. I'm grateful, my daughter. Ophebia smiled softly. We are family, Mama, and family takes care of each other. Months passed, and then one day, while Ophebia and Mama Moses were arranging tomatoes, Ophebia's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She wiped her hands on her dress before picking up. Hello? Madam Ophebia, a deep voice asked. This is Inspector Mensah from the CID. We need you to come to the station immediately. Her heart skipped. What? Why? You'll see when you get here. By the time they arrived, Mama Moses trailing behind her hands were shaking. Inside the station, a sight she never expected. Lawyer Gambila and Beverly, both in handcuffs. Mama Moses gasped, grabbing Ophebia's arm. What's going on? The officer didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a button on a recorder. The room filled with voices. Agambile's voice, furious. You promised to marry me once the properties were in your name. Beverly's voice, cold, mocking. And you actually believed me? Look at you. Risked your whole career for what? Sweetheart, I'm only going to say it once, so listen carefully. You were just a stepping stone. Then came the worst part. Agambila, desperate, his voice low and trembling. What if someone finds out we forged the will? Silence. Ophebia's stomach dropped. Mama Moses' hand flew to her mouth. The officer stopped the recording and folded her arms. After the reading of the will, Agambila tried to throw his wife and children out. That woman overheard their fight, recorded everything, and handed it over. Beverly glared at the officer. You think this will hold up in court? She scoffed. I have lawyers. Not anymore. A new voice. The police chief stepped forward, shaking a thick document. We traced your bank accounts, Beverly. We know this is not the first family you've left in ruins. We know about the offshore transfers, pregnancy scams, fraud, conspiracy, forgery. You'll be locked away for a long time. Beverly Smirk faltered. For the first time, Ophelia saw something in her eyes she had never seen before: fear. She turned to Lawyer Gambila, but he just shook his head defeated. And in that moment, justice was served. But Ophelia didn't smile. She simply exhaled, took Mama Moses' hand, and walked away. Because life had already taught her, revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that karma never forgets. The moral of the story is that greed, betrayal, and injustice will eventually be exposed, and true forgiveness and kindness will always prevail. Moses' choices to prioritize his mother's pressure and a deceitful lover over his faithful wife and child led to his family suffering, but in the end, truth and justice restored what was lost. The story also highlights the importance of standing by those who truly care for you, and that compassion, even towards those who have wronged you, can lead to healing and redemption.
Hi fam, click the link on the right to dive into yet another captivating tale. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Until next time, it's bye from us at Apenthene African Stories.